attention. Very happy to present a discussion of the Italian language in the native city of Dante, a city so intertwined with the Florentine vernacular. Those of us who fight for the diffusion of this exquisite language in higher education in the States face an uphill battle, unfortunately. Academic programs, even the MLA admits it, are inevitably subject to shifts. And of course, we've seen it with COVID, but also global economies, right? Cultural interests, priorities have changed. And my university, which is, I would like to point out, tuition driven. So it's really not a state university that funds are coming in, happens to be in financial difficulty. And so it is no exception to this rule of the flux of change. And this is a bad time for languages. And I'll show you why. So hence my discussion today, Saving Italian, a program coordinator, I'm happy to be that, my journey to program survival. So this is sort of the state of affairs on some experiences and strategies to enhance an OTE, other languages other than English curriculum. And I've rehashed the program. I've been even before I got tenure, I got tenure in 2012. I've been coordinator for more than a decade, and I've rehashed the curriculum, trying to adhere to a lot of the standards of MLA. We've gained a bit, but now it's going back, and you'll see that the national numbers are also indicative of a decline in general for Italian and other Romance languages, at least in the United States. So there is this great shrinking population. Let me just get you here to see a slide. These are the 2021 enrollment trends in the US. So this is basically right around COVID. Some of these studies come out, 3 years later, and it goes back. Also, the program review comes every 5 years. So when we do a program review, the bleak numbers of majors, they're in the single digits for the 3 Romance languages. This is something that represents a trend over 5 years. So it's like doing your taxes. You do the retrospective 5 years. So Italian, its vulnerability has gotten considerably worse because now it's competing not only with Spanish and French, but also with Mandarin and Arabic and so forth. Arabic is next to Italian, as you see. So there's a menu of options now to compete with Italian. I'm happy to say that the program review was not as bad as I expected. Still, there's a lot to report and to work with. Basically, Italian in our department has to compete in a certain way with Spanish and French because we still have a language requirement. It used to be 4 semesters. It is now 2 semesters for many programs, not all programs. But Spanish has an advantage, and French to some extent has an advantage to something that we don't. And this might sort of overlap with some things that were said before. That is, we don't have heritage speakers in Italian so much. They have 3rd generation Italian Americans who are curious about the culture. They want to study abroad. 2 semesters of a language is not going to get you to be proficient to do an internship or something like that. So it's going to be a rather superficial, unless you take on a major, which very few are doing, at least these days. So Spanish has that. It has a greater number of students overall that we do that it serves. And I'm speaking also for French. And then they have a great amount of full-timers. But that is not always such a wonderful thing because what the schools in higher ed will do is they count the ratio of full-time faculty members to student enrollment. And in my naivete many years ago, I thought it was the overall enrollment. So we had like 450 students. So I said, okay, we're 2 full-timers, 9 part-timers, and we'll be okay. No, they count only the majors. And all of us, Spanish, Italian, and French, have majors in the single digits. So it doesn't look good. And the next, probably if we're in this position in 5 years, they're going to close the major. Now, all of this is happening on my watch as coordinator. When, if you look here, what the Language Connections Foundation, is a great support for teachers of languages in the US. I mean, that 20% of Americans speaking a second language at home now has gone up with the immigration situation in the US. But what is even more, a wake-up call is the second bullet point, which is 90% of US employers want people that have this multilingual talent. So how do I prepare them for this? Because as you know, and I think we've sort of had this common denominator amongst ourselves, it's become the teacher's charge to get people ready for careers in the language. This should be refreshing. However, I've also taken a look through the MLA, and my research has kind of showed that successful programs usually have these four things. Ample funding. So to be quite honest, and I put this in the program review, I don't even have a stipend as coordinator, and I host all the events that, we were talking about collaborative effort. We have like movie nights, we have tutoring, peer tutoring, we have cultural exchange. I have funded those from my own pocket. We do have an Italian Cultural Center that I'm trying to convince the administration to use more fund-wise. I'm on the scholarship committee there, and we give $30,000 a year to students who have a significant investment in studying Rome, and will do so with the language, because we don't want it to become a situation where they're speaking English and taking courses in English in Rome and going out with their friends and speaking English again. What is the point? One of the very lovely things that has happened this year, and it's almost, if this doesn't work, we're kind of a little bit on the desperation area, but we will be sharing with our department Italian, French, Spanish, in some of the minor languages, a bequeathal. We received a post-mortem funding from someone who was in the program, and I actually looked that up. According to the MLA, people that, alumni, right, that come from a four-year institution usually make these endowments to the university on the 1,000 level, which is the lowest level. So if they've had a good experience in the department as a level 1 or level 2 student, they're usually more likely to donate. You would think it would be a major or a minor. It's not. It's these people who donate. So we have a $250,000 endowment now to add to some of the monies. The other thing we need is support from administrative offices and other departments. Well, we work with the other departments. I'll talk about it later with tentacularity. We try to, like the octopus, right, reach out to other external departments or internally within our department to create different and fresh coursework and so forth. But one of the big problems with the administration is that they cancel, and that's why I had asked that question earlier, they cancel courses that sometimes have less than 10 students, and now they look even if they are paying students. So you could be 100 and 5 paid, it counts as a 5 paid. So it will be canceled. So how will we ever, if we have, again, in the single digits, these majors, how will we get advanced or intermediate to advanced courses to run if this is the sentiment? So that's another hurdle. Then something we've been working on, a willingness to prioritize studying the cultural component of the language. So that means language and culture, which is something, again, the MLA has always fostered. Anytime you're teaching language, we've all kind of said you're teaching culture because it's inextricable, right? But also content courses that are offered in dual platforms. So, for example, we have courses that now either on Italian literary figures. We have one on Dante, where I give lectures in English, and the students that are taking the class for their particular requirement in English write their assignment work in English. The Italian minors or majors, using it as a sequence for whatever their target is, hand in their work in lingua. So we try to prioritize this. This is a new initiative because ultimately we're resistant to that because they're hearing less and less of the target language, right? But we have to work with what we have. Then, of course, and here's the common denominator with what a lot of my fellow presenters said, is focus on applying language learning in this real life context. I just last year found out that the university received an endowment to open after COVID, a nursing school. So now we're going to have medical Italian, medical French, and medical Spanish. And I would think that the medical French and medical Spanish would also lead to, interesting developments, especially the French, because you have Creole, which is an endangered language, right? The French is endangered. Imagine how much more Creole would be. For Italian, it would be interesting because we would have a lot of people in the New York area. I'm going to create an internship where the kids have to work in a hospital as volunteers. They probably would hear a lot more dialect from the local Italian Americans than the standard Italian. So we'll have to deal with that when the moment comes. But anyway, just to move it along a bit, Dennis Looney of MLA came to visit our college with some pointers. And, one of the first things, you have to start at the base when you fight the administration to keep a program alive. What is our mission statement? We had an old mission statement and I went to redo it. And we are an Vincentian institution. So a lot of people immediately think in the Catholic world that it's St. Vincent de Paul, which it is. And so therefore, I know the French have made a case that French should be definitely in the curriculum because it's St. Vincent de Paul. But it was an Italian missionary who came to found the Vincentian institution. So I put that in the mission statement, and we also have an enormous campus thanks to the Vincentians in Prati in Rome. So we've had up till now 4 campuses where Italian is taught. New York is fighting for Astor Place for Manhattan. That's not yet. They closed Staten Island, where I had a great Italian-American population. Well, you guys know if I would ever get a heritage speaker, it would have been there. But that's closed in order to save money. We have the Queens campus in Rome. So ultimately, if the mission statement is to enforce all the things we've talked about: cooperative learning community, Italian for careers, and so forth, because the alternative would be becoming a service department. What does that mean? Why would we want to avoid that? Ultimately, the numbers would be there if we had a language requirement. So we'd be in the throes of programs who decide 2 semesters of a language are important for international law or something like that. And then if they decide otherwise, we would be cut. So what are the repercussions are exactly that we would be in the throes of and in the dictates of other departments who could decide our fate. And we are 2 full-timers who are supposed to teach 6 courses between the 2 of us, right, per semester. So we teach 12, and then we have 9 adjuncts because we have so many campuses. Now, I'll try to do my best. Thank you. There's so much to say. But we try to show that we teach skill sets that match up with the 5 pillars of the university. And here they are. The student success, right? Student engagement and belonging. We have created a peer tutoring center where we have 5, we have a GA and 4 tutors, so there are 5 altogether. Most all native speakers, or if we can get a successful major to do it, sort of like an internal internship. And it's sort of become the language hub, not only for Italian, but for French and for Spanish. And we have a lot of events there. We have movies, we have old cohorts that study abroad, meeting up with new cohorts that study abroad. So there's a lot of sharing at these events. And then academic distinction, not only for us, but also, you know, besides for the faculty, at least for the full-timers, but we also try to lead faculty-guided student research. So, for example, we have one girl who's now gone on to Columbia University, and she did a study of the different influences on the Italian dialects, how many different influences there are, and you know, there are many, and all the history behind that. Another a history major who combined history and Italian, because that is the way of the future. The tentacularity is reaching out, asking the kids to double major or to take Italian for a specific target career. He did his student research on the epistolary correspondence between Benjamin Franklin and Gaetano Filangieri. He's one of the first people to talk about the American dream before the Americans talked about the American dream. So all of this has been, you know, a labor of love. Then mission, as I said before, tying it back to service, because the Vincentians, anytime you see a Vincentian name, it's CN, the Congregation of the Mission. So we do service. I do service with my students. I did it last month in Rome with them. We fed the homeless, we interacted with the homeless. We try to have this as a sense of the mission built into a language class, which is rare usually. Anyway, then the institutional resources that I talked to you about, we're trying to have the incentive funds for majors and minors. And then, of course, elevating our national and global stature with partnerships. We have a partnership with the University of Perugia for a certificate program. We also have virtual study abroad. I don't know how many of you know the CUNY system, well, the SUNY system, COIL, where it's inclusive. Not everybody can afford to study abroad, even with the scholarships that we give them. So there's a virtual exchange between Sacro Cuore and St. John's. Students of basic level of Italian, speaking with the students of English, basic level of English at Sacro Cuore. And then we have a new president who believes in inclusivity, equity, and inclusion. And for the first time, I'm going to try to get a course on LGBTQ plus community. And I'm going to do it vis-a-vis sort of literary tourism in Sicily, actually. Taormina would be the focus, and it might be a little study abroad as well. Let me see how to bring this together. I think I mentioned that the tentacularity, this reaching out, combining programs, and now one of my colleagues wants to combine sort of a double, so in other words, you get like a 3-way concentration, Italian, French, and Spanish in 40 credits or something like that. Again, we're watering down the system, but we're trying our best. The tentacularity includes, you know, going into different global settings. Here is the high impact practices that if I go here, I will never finish, but it's all the labor intensive, all of that. And I stress it so much because all the findings, all the research points to the fact that the retention rate, nothing affects it so greatly in a positive way as these intensive experiences that a lot of you also have at your institutions. These learning to work together, solving problems, study groups, intensive writing. I always have the students when they study abroad with me, and here we were back in May, I always have them in a buddy system already before we leave New York, because I don't want any kid abandoned, sort of alone in Rome. This, I'll end here because this is the positive. Dante entered the core curriculum. This, is a great achievement because we are the only with French because of the Caribbean studies program. They have one course in the core. That means as long as we have this core, Dante will be in the core. Even after one day I leave or die, Dante will be there as long as it's in the core, and it will always be dual platform. But it's been Dante and social justice. The most amount of times I've taught Dante, 5 times in the past 6 years, with good numbers, never been canceled because I have kids taking it for the core requirement in English, and then those that need to an elective for the major or the minor, hand their work in Italian. So this is the way of the future. Would you like me to just do the last sort of conclusion and thank you? Medical Italian, Black Italy, so many things I have. I want enhanced recruitment, which means I'm going to do it because the school no longer recruits in secondary schools where languages are taught. That's not one of their, for some reason, not an interest for them. The high impact practices, pathway to the future, dispersing all of these funds, because this is the last motion. I feel that in 5 years, if we're in the same position, we will have retrenchment. So focusing on student success and career-oriented courses like that nursing course and medical Italian, and then these dual platform classes that I've mentioned in English and target language. So I thank you for your attention. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for your speech. It's very interesting here. I know that in Norway too, the universities will